Welcome to this week's episode of Empowering Musicians podcast. I am your host, Michael Manley, and I am pleased to be welcoming my good friend, Russell Jones, who is the president and CEO of Orchestra Lumos in Stamford, Connecticut. Great to have you as our guest this week, Russell, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. Good to be with you. Good to see you.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about how you got into music in the first place, and then how you got into orchestra management, because it's a very specific kind of field, right?
Yeah, and a fairy tale entry into the business. Actually, I went to the University of Kent in the UK to read British and American politics and government. And my lucky break, in a way, was going to a university that didn't have a music faculty, but it did have a thriving music society and a musical life on campus. A wonderful professional music director, but he was a department of one. And so the student music society was the vehicle through which all the music happened. So I got very involved with that for 3 years. And I thought, well, I like this arts administration thing. And I wonder if there's somebody out there that would hire me. So when the career department, as they did to everybody, said, well, you should be an accountant, I said, no, I don't think so. I think I want to do arts administration. And they had no idea what that was. So I wrote to every orchestra, theatre, dance company, arts centre, the Arts Council, funding bodies, just to say, I'd love to be the fourth assistant in the box office making the tea. And my lucky break was the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra in the north of England said, yeah, we have a job for you. It's the orchestra personnel manager. It's the bottom rung of our management ladder, but you will run the rehearsals, drive conductors around, pick up soloists, book the buses, hotels. I mean, what an apprenticeship for a 21-year-old.
Oh man.
And everybody came to Liverpool in a sort of 5-year cycle. I was there about 4.5 years. And I met so many people, and it was just a wonderful fairy tale entry into the business. I really did expect to be making the tea in the box office to start with, but I got this very lucky break. And I had a number of jobs until 15 years ago when I was running the Association of British Orchestras, which is a bit like the League of American Orchestras over here, but with some differences. I got to know the League very well and moved over in 2007 to be the VP of Marketing and Membership. So that's how I got across the pond, which is now home. A stint at the New York Philharmonic, where I ended up as Director of Major Gifts. And I think that's the reason I got the then Stamford Symphony job, because my biggest part of my job is fundraising. And we don't have a director of development. That's me as well. And like a lot of orchestras, 3/4 of our budget is gifts and sponsorship and so on. Box office is only 25% of our income. So I've been here for 5 years, and part of our growth strategy and our sort of plan to ensure that the orchestra is here in 25 years' time was to rebrand and have a much wider county and community-wide feel to what we're doing. And so we rebranded as Orchestra Lumos, which is from the Latin for light. And we hope to shine musical light across the county. So that launches when we rebranded over the summer, and our first presentation will be on the 24th of September at our gala with the great Maria Freeman coming over from the UK. So exciting year ahead.
That's really thrilling. And what made you? I would assume that you wanted to get away from a specific place name. You didn't want to be Stamford because you're serving a greater area.
Well, yeah. I mean, it started by thinking we're only custodians of these institutions. And there was a Stamford Symphony in 1919. As we know it, we were reconstituted in the late 60s and then fully professionalized, unionized, got out of the high school and into the theatre in the early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot of chief execs, that's a lot of chairmen of the board, that's a lot of musicians going through the serving the institution and the community. And my view was, look, we've got to make sure we hand this institution over to the next generations in better shape than we found it, and with an ability to be sustainable. And I mean, this is a big issue facing orchestras, and we've with all the issues before the pandemic. We'll perhaps come back to talk about that, but we decided Stamford Symphony already had 50% of its audience coming from outside Stamford, mm-hmm. and 75% of its donors lived outside Stamford. And yet our focus was pretty much on the city of Stamford, which we love. It's our home, and the Palace Theatre will be, and that's not the issue. But people said to us in other towns, you never come to our library, you never come to our school, you never come to our place of worship. We need you to make an investment in us if we're going to continue to invest in you for a bigger picture. And we definitely wanted to do more education and community engagement work. Like a lot of orchestras, our diversity engagement work, leaves a lot to be desired. I mean, we are working on that very hard. We're one of the lucky orchestras that won a grant from the League of American Orchestras for the Catalyst Fund to really look at our EDI work a lot more effectively than we have in the past, and that's overdue, and we're very pleased to do that work. And so now, with us having a presence across the county of Fairfield County here in Connecticut, it seemed that the Stamford brand wasn't appropriate anymore. And we also wanted to get people to think of the orchestra differently, particularly for audiences that didn't know us or didn't like us as Stamford Symphony. Stamford Symphony in the past was all about, you basically got to come and hear symphonies at the Palace Theatre. If we did something else, that was, if we did a chamber music concert, or we did something for under 40s in the brewery, or we did something educational, well, that's fine, but it's peripheral to the real product. And while of course we want everybody to come to the Palace and hear what our guys do so brilliantly, the new theory was, look, whatever touch point works, whether you're 25 years old, you want to go to one of our Symphony on Tap concerts at the brewery, where we put two of our musicians there with an open bar. I mean, those have sold out. If that's your only touch point with the symphony, or the Orchestra Lumos now, that's equally valid to showing up and hearing Beethoven 5 at the Palace. And it's really taking our product to audiences on their terms and in their spaces. And the old Stamford Symphony would say, well, here's what you're getting. Aren't you lucky? Orchestra Lumos says, what do you need? Yeah. How can we help? How can we partner? And that's particularly true with our education and community engagement work. And just to give you an example, 2018-19, before the pandemic, we spent about 35,000 on education programming. Next season, we'll spend nearly 200,000.
Wow.
So, we've hired a full-time education community engagement manager, Nick Gonzalez. He's amazing. And he's built us a program with schools and after-school programs. And people are now coming to us. The Greater Connecticut Youth Orchestras came to us and said, can you help us with our chamber music coaching for our elite kids in the youth orchestra? That's great. I mean, that's not us barging in there and saying, hey, aren't you lucky? We're here to give you, this. It was them coming to us and saying, how can you help?
Yeah.
And something I'm very proud of is that we never, ever charge a penny for any of our services to our partners, whether it's public schools, after school programs, whatever it is. We fundraise that 200,000 to pay for our guys to go in and do that free of charge, and that's very important.
That's great. And when you were thinking about how did you find out all this? Did you survey your community? Did you sit down with some of your constituents and say, what do you need? Because I do think that the old model was to say, here we are, we're great, come to us, right? But you're looking at a very different model.
Yeah, no, I mean, we didn't make that stuff up about, come to our library, come to our school. We were told it. We did some research. I mean, it started off by, we hired Michael Stone as our music director. I mean, we were very lucky. Michael lives in the community. His daughters are growing up here, and he absolutely, has ambitions and plans for us, from what we do in the classroom to the kind of repertoire we do on stage with the whole orchestra. And it was very clear, you don't hire a music director of the caliber of Michael Stern and then shortchange him. We realized we were a $1.5 million budget orchestra, and we actually listed the things we wanted to do, from more rehearsals, more concerts, bigger orchestras, the whole education department, rehearsing more in the Palace Theatre, where we actually give our concerts rather than in a rehearsal hall in New York. A whole 25 things on our shopping list, which happened to come to about $935,000. So, we did our research to see, is the money out there? Can we add $1 million to our budget over 5 years? And we made a good start on that, so that we can deliver the list of aspirations that we have for Orchestra Lumos. And, the board, the staff, the musicians, totally partnered with us. And even during 2 years of the pandemic, we raised $4 million, coming in over 5 years, which is a good start to adding the $1 million a year we need to really deliver all those things. So yeah, it was based in a lot of research, a lot of conversations, and of course the bit that catches people's attention is the name. That's the icing on the cake, but it's not the cake. In a way, what's in a name? We knew, we wanted to drop Stamford. We didn't want to be as, what I think of, boring as the Orchestra of Fairfield County or Fairfield County Symphony or something. There already is an orchestra in the town of Fairfield, which is 25 miles up the road. And we got some professional help, and we looked at all the ways you could name an orchestra, from made-up names, like Accenture is a made-up name, to names like Orpheus, like the Orpheus Chamber Orchestra in New York, and so on. And we knew we wanted to drop code words. We've dropped symphony, philharmonic, chamber music, repertoire. These are code words that are meaningless to a lot of people who may never have come across us before. So our chamber music series is now the small space series, because we obviously go to small spaces like a library or a church or classroom or whatever. And it's not the classics series anymore. It's the Palace Theatre series, because it's not all classics for a start. And it's at our home, the Palace Theatre. So we wanted to avoid code. We wanted to avoid musical names. We could have been the Crescendo Symphony or something, but again, a lot of people don't know what that means. And Lumos Light, we can explain what that means. Harry Potter fans, of course, know exactly what it means. And I think it's a good leveler, and I think we can. Slightly to my surprise, we had 2 complaints from subscribers who were really upset that we made the change. One gentleman hadn't bought a ticket since 2015, and had never made a gift. So, I couldn't get too upset about him not being happy. Otherwise, honestly, our traditional subscriber base has embraced Orchestra Lumos very well. And, we've designed some quality print This is the brochure for next season, which I think is as good as anything you'll see a Group 1 orchestra, major orchestra producing. And if I can show you one page I'm very proud of, that's Fairfield County. And those are sections of it, and those are all the engagement stuff we're doing. There's one little second strip along is Stamford. And 3 years ago, that would have been the only thing highlighted. And now look at it. We're across the whole county. This is what matters to us. And look, will it work? Will it? We're having difficulties getting audiences to come back. If you saw that article in the New York Times a couple of days ago, everybody, the product is back, but the audience is slow in coming back. Our truncated season last year, 45% of subscribers didn't renew. And I predict a 25% reduction on our traditional 18-19 last full year base for the coming season. So it's, we all did pretty well out of government support during the pandemic.
Yeah.
The crunch year is coming. The next 2 years are the crunch years when, we'll lose money. Okay, that's what reserves are for. But, we made money during the pandemic, and now we're going to lose money as we come out of the pandemic until the audience comes back, and B, when the new audience kicks in, we hope, because they have to. Because frankly, that 45% isn't coming back completely. I think I always hoped I'd be retired by the time we fell off the subscription edge, and the subscription model sort of really changed. I thought we had 5 or 10 years left of that secure block of subscribers, which actually we've been pretty flat on subscriptions, and most orchestras have lost 1 or 2% in the last 10 years or so, if not longer. And all the issues of churn and keeping existing subscribers, we've fallen off our cliff now with 45% not coming back, and we'll see where we end up this year. But I don't think we're going to make box office budget, unfortunately. So we've got our work cut out, which actually, we did Orchestra Lumos as the rebrand to help us raise that additional money. Where we slightly stolen a march on the future is that it's actually going to be very important for audience development. Lumos is now a new product, a different product that we can sell in different ways to different audiences. And I thought that was some time off. It's not. It's arrived now. And we've got to be very creative in terms of encouraging new audiences, because the old ones are not all coming back.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. So one of the sort of pieces of information that was floating out was that people don't want to subscribe to the whole season, but we're going to sell 3 and 4 concert packages.
Yeah.
Is that proving true, that that's more popular? And also, there was this kind of understanding that the subscribers are always going to be 55 and older, that young people don't want to come. We're not even going to try to get them in the door. Where are both of those pieces of sort of myths or facts out there?
Well, I think it depends on the nature of the orchestra. I mean, we are a small, nearly $2 million orchestra, and we don't have a lot of concerts. We do 5 pairs of subscription concerts. We do 7 small space concerts across the county, a lot of education things. It's not as if, we're the New York Phil with a 35-week subscription season. So they're not the same. And then, our older community up here to some extent, we lose some people, the snowbirds, we have a big gap. We don't do concerts in January and February, December, January, February, because a chunk of our audience goes to Florida.
Oh, interesting.
So, next season we have concerts October, November, March, April, May. we will see where single tickets go. What I am noticing is, but this was the case before the pandemic as well. Yes, younger people don't buy subscriptions, and everybody buys single tickets later and later. I mean, these are just cliches, but in our case, they're true. It's terrifying how few single tickets we've sold so far. But our first concert is not until the 24th of September. And then the opening night is 15th and 16th of October. So it's way too early. And I just know with 10 days to go, we're going to be terrified at how bad the house is. And then, please God, we'll see people buying at the last minute. That's not anything new. I think we've seen that. We saw that before the pandemic. And I think that's, if we accept that the subscription model, if not entirely on life support, is certainly not very well, then I think we've got to think very carefully about encouraging those people to have smaller packages, and find all the ways to incentivize people to come for single tickets. And we've got to. It's another cliche. The business has talked about it for years, but I don't think we've done a very good job in terms of our presentations. I mean, we've dropped white tie and tails. We're doing a lot more video. I mean, look, this is not news for the major orchestras who have a lot of resources, but it's a big deal for us. We don't have an internal IT department, a technology department that can just bang out a video like that. I mean, it's a deal for us to make that happen, but it has to happen. We've really this year, with the launch of Lumos, upped our game in terms of social media, a lot more video, using Instagram and Twitter and TikTok better than ever before. And we have no choice in that. I mean, that's absolutely what we have to do. And we have to, longer term, and we don't have a lot of real estate to play with, but I think certainly for younger audiences, sitting in the dark in serried rows at 7:30 at night isn't a very attractive proposition. I'm surprised that there aren't larger orchestras that do their concerts 3 or 4 times a week that don't do something different on Friday night, for instance. Why is that concert not going on at 10 o'clock? Like the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment has been doing in the UK for many years. It's called the night something. I forget what it's called, the night stop or something. And it's £10, sit anywhere, take a drink in. It's a 1-hour concert, truncated, and then there's drinks in the lobby with the jazz band afterwards.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of that experimentation by many of the larger orchestras. I wish we could do it here, but we have so little, as I say, real estate to play with. Yeah. But I do think what is positive is I think Beethoven isn't the problem. I think everything we put around the core canon and the other works that the increasingly diverse programs that we're doing, more women composers, more works by composers of color, long overdue. It shouldn't have taken the events of 2020 to make that happen, but it did. And we are now everybody's thinking much more focusedly on what are we playing and who's playing it. Yeah. And the hard part, which takes a lot of resources, is to whom are we playing it? And working, audience development takes years. We'll put a few Latino composers on the program and the community will show up. That's ridiculous. It takes long-term engagement and trust and partnership. Again, it's not just put it on the shelf and assume people will buy it. That's not how you build audiences. You build audiences from the bottom up with real, as we used to say at the League of American Orchestras, genuine, authentic community engagement. That's absolutely a 50-50 partnership. So in our own small way, with our little budget and our community here, Orchestra Lumos sums up at least having a crack at doing these things. And as I say, who knows, in 25 years time, when they look back at, what we did now, they might say, God, what were they thinking? What were they smoking at the time? Or they might say, yeah, they put some seeds down, which 25 years time have germinated, and we can look back and see the start of something that has built. And that's where this whole thing started. It really was, as CEO, I feel hugely the responsibility of maintaining this institution for future generations of musicians and audiences. And I might have got it wrong, but I've had a crack at it, and only history will tell.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really exciting. And I think you touched on something that we don't really, I don't think until recently we were talking about, which is just some of the barriers that people have, whether it be language or, you talked about getting away from chamber music and philharmonic and all these terms. And also, being more inclusive. And I think often that means not, as you said, like, we can program this music, but maybe the barrier is that people don't feel welcome in our hall, or they want to go somewhere else to see it or consume it, or they want it to be brought to their community. And all of these things are, I think, really important questions that are being asked. And I think over the pandemic, I noticed that, the sort of assumption is, well, the pandemic was terrible for all orchestras. We couldn't really put on concerts. Our audiences disengaged and all these things. But I think a lot of people did creative things. I mean, the New York Philharmonic, conveniently was able to renovate their hall. And they also had, that truck that was kind of cool that was going around doing chamber.
Oh, look, I mean, we created the Stamford Symphony channel in 2 weeks of the lockdown.
Wow.
Back in March 2020. And the musicians were absolutely incredible in terms of putting up videos, being interviewed. A lot of our audience has said to us, we feel we know the musicians so much more personally now in a three-dimensional way, because we've seen them interviewed, we've been on town halls with them on Zoom, than we ever did sitting in the hall when they're, sort of one-dimensional as a whole orchestra on stage. And we've now, Melanie Feld, our principal oboe, did a video with me on reeds and the bane of oboists' lives, scraping reeds, making reeds. This was one of our best, most popular videos, because so many of our audience had no idea what she has to go through. And you can spend all day making a reed, as you know, and then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Maybe we'd have got around to it, but we got to it much, much faster, because we had to put the whole orchestra online, as it were. And our 2 online videos, galas rather, were 2 of the most successful things we did. I think we want to get back to live performance. I'm skeptical about streaming concerts. A lot of our audience never showed up for them, because that's not how they like their music. They want live music, and that's crucial. But we needed to do something. Some smart person said to me, "You've got to make Stamford Symphony the 4th emergency service in Fairfield County," and that was in my head all the way through us creating the channel. And we never charged for anything that we put online during the pandemic. And I believe we played our part, as the arts must, to bring solace and comfort and entertainment to the community. And in a way, the pandemic was an opportunity as much as a threat to do that. And I'm very proud of what the orchestra did during that time. And we know it was deeply appreciated.
Yeah.
Now, you've got to come back in the hall.
Yeah. And the good thing, I think, also was that musicians were able to stay engaged with their audiences and also get paid. Like you guys, you paid your musicians, which is
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
We had a really good story coming out of our Philadelphia local union where during the pandemic, they decided to start a musicians relief fund and fund it through online concerts. And they had people from the Philadelphia Orchestra doing recitals over streaming and on all of that. And it was really very sort of transformative for them. And they were able to raise a lot of money and then turn over the nonprofit to their musicians to run. And it was just like a great pandemic story, because there wasn't very many of them. But so in terms of the future of the orchestra, like this has been something that's been said for like 100 years, which is that the orchestras are dying, right? And now it's like we're in this pandemic moment. And as you said, you did some online engagement, but you don't think that's the future, right? For your orchestra, you're not looking to continue that kind of like model where some people might engage online versus in the hall. Where do you think, what can you look at in your crystal ball for the future post-pandemic of orchestras?
Well, I think it's flexibility. I do think it's live performance. I don't think you can get away with that. You can't make it pay. You can't make concerts pay anyway without donations. We know that. But it's there's no evidence that audiences have switched over to music that way. People actually, the main problem I think in people not coming back is they've got out of the habit, and they haven't got back in the habit yet of coming to concerts. We'll see this year. The thing I'm dreading is another surge in the fall, because that really will finish off the people who are nervous about coming into enclosed spaces and so on. I just hope to goodness that we don't have that, and that we continue this slow climb back. What was disappointing, everybody thought, oh gosh, there'll be a snapback in audiences. Everybody will be so hungry to get back to live performance. It hasn't happened. It's really not happened. There are pockets of, it's geographic. I talked to some colleagues in Florida, and they don't recognize the problem. They've been pretty sustained with their audiences, but I think they pretty well ignored COVID in the first place in Florida. So that's a different discussion. But no, I think a lot of us are not seeing the return of audiences. So I think we've got, as I say, it's the change in what we do, how we do it, and to whom we do it has accelerated. And look, we love subscribers. We love our older audience, of course. Long may they stay with us. But we now have to fight on more fronts. We have to, deliver on more fronts, and we have to look at our programming, our marketing, and who we're putting on stage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a silver bullet here. I don't think. I think it's a combination of things. Everything is local. Connecticut has more orchestras per head of population than any other state in the country.
Crazy.
And we've got Greenwich Symphony 5 miles down the road. We've got Norwalk Symphony 5 miles up the road. We've all got our audiences, but we share audience too. And it's important that what we do here works for us and works for our audience, and they'll do their thing. And that's absolutely right. But we've got to be creative and flexible, and we've got to listen, crucially. We've got to keep our ear to the ground with our audiences. And that's why it might only be $200,000 out of a nearly $2 million budget. But that investment in the community engagement and education work we're doing is an investment. It's so not a cost. It's an investment on what we're trying to build. And yeah, it's a down payment on a long-term project, but it's essential.
Yeah. That's all really exciting. I did want to ask you one specific question about how, like, oftentimes it's sometimes you can kind of judge the health of an organization by how they when they get to a negotiation, right? And what is the dynamic between labor and management? In this case, your musicians and your negotiating team on the other side, which is what you're representing. And
Sure.
how do you approach those, and how do you understand that you're in this what's going to be an adversarial sort of fight over some things, but also respecting both sides and keeping the trust that you've built?
Well, look, I used to work at the League. I know the issues we have in this industry, and we're incredibly lucky in Stamford. We talk about the Stamford Symphony Orchestra Lumos family, and I think it's about trust and transparency. It's that simple. We are very close to our musicians. We're very close to the orchestra committee. We include them on everything. We have representation on the board, and we put them first during the pandemic. I mean, we made a number of payments to our musicians during the pandemic, just because you need help. Your lives have been turned upside down. You've gone from being full-time freelance musicians with Broadway shows and all the orchestras in New York that our guys play in, to maybe a little bit of Zoom teaching, if you're lucky. I mean, that's horrific.
Yeah.
And our priority was, we must put every penny in their pockets that we can in that period to help them. Now, look, we employ our guys 5-6 weeks a year. We're not the biggest single part of their portfolio during the whole season, but we had to do our part. And there were some that didn't do that were more results than us, and that's shameful. And we are very proud of how we took care of our musicians. Our musicians were incredibly grateful and said so, and wrote wonderful notes to us from many, many members of the orchestra saying, thank you. And we're about to go into negotiations. It's going to be a tough couple of years. We've shared that, and we'll come out the other side with something that works. And we're very lucky that we all like each other. We're very respectful of each other. We understand, what we all have to do together, and we believe in what we're doing. The orchestra are absolutely part of the rebrand. And we had long discussions about the name change. I believe they feel absolutely included and involved in what we did. And I don't know how else you do it. Without our musicians, why have a board? Why have a staff? Why print brochures? The orchestra is the orchestra, and we need to do everything we can to make the environment in which they can do their best work with Michael as strong as we possibly can. And thank goodness for the moment, we're all on the same page. We like each other. We work well together. We talk a lot. We have a lot of fun. And we're very excited about Orchestra Lumos hitting the ground running next month. And I feel very lucky that I get to do this right now.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really a great example of like a really like, as you say, healthy kind of management labor culture you have. And I think what drives musicians crazy is if you don't have a plan for growth. And it sounds like you have a plan to really grow in relevancy and impact, as well as in size. And often for service orchestras, it's not really even about the amount you make, right? It's like, well, yeah, we can talk about getting a $10 raise per service, but if we don't have services,
Right.
and so that's the issue we have in Las Vegas, which is not an adjacent city to a major city like New York, right? And so getting people to stay there is really difficult because there's not a lot of the ancillary work that would create the ecosystem for somebody to be able to teach and perform and all of those things full time. So we have a lot of unfortunately, we have a lot of turnover in the artistic community because there just aren't those.
Well, we're lucky. We're lucky that we are only 35 miles outside New York. It also means our competition is Carnegie Hall and the New York Philharmonic,
right.
because we know we share audience with those two institutions. But that's good. And actually, if you want to hear Joshua Bell play in New York next year, you better come to us because we've got him, and I don't think he's playing in New York. So check out orchestralumos.org for an amazing season.
Awesome. And so if folks wanted to find you, they can look for you on social media, Russell Jones on Facebook, or email you at rjones@orchestralumos. Is that what it is?
That's probably orchestralumos.org. Yeah, there's a few Russell Joneses on Facebook. So
yeah.
And obviously the website orchestralumos.org. Yeah, I'd love to talk to people. And
so And I want to close with one final question, which is, if you have, because I face this all the time where people say, I love playing the flute or I love playing the cello, but I'm really curious about going into orchestra management. What advice would you give a musician specifically in your orchestra who came to you and said, hey, Russell, I'm thinking about a career change. What should I know about this world?
Well, a lot of managers were professional musicians. And I think some of them are really good because they've got that experience. I mean, I was never good enough as a violinist to make it professionally. I'm a much better administrator than a violinist. Not that that's saying much. But look, it's the usual things. It's it's not the best paid industry. It's a lot of work, but gosh, is it rewarding?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I get a little bit of me, and this goes back to when I was a starstruck 21-year-old at the Liverpool Philharmonic. A little bit of me goes on stage every time we do a concert because I feel, I've had quite a lot to do with making the thing happen. And okay, I can't be at the back of the second violins, but I can be there in spirit in terms of, and that's a great feeling. That's an incredible feeling. And I like talking, music with musicians. I love, he doesn't need my help, but I love talking programs with Michael Stern and thinking about what we could do, especially in the new world of, greater creativity, greater diversity, more diverse soloists and so on. I mean, you don't get that being an accountant.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think if you're looking for change, if you're, chops are getting tired and it's time for a change, then it's a great career. I love it. I've done it for 42 years now. So, and my accountant says you've got to do it for another 10. So we'll see. And, but it's a lot of fun. No, I wouldn't put anybody off for a moment.
Yeah. And I think the League of American Orchestras is still running their fellowship program, which is a wonderful program. I went through it many years ago.
But the other one that's really helpful is the sort of introduction to orchestral management, the 2-week course that they do, which is, I'm not sure I got the title right, but that's very good. A lot of people have done that and got into the business that way. I totally recommend that.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you. I think the best managers are folks like yourself who have some connection to music, right? Like they've played in a youth orchestra, or they've played professionally, or they've played in community organizations. I think you're missing something if you don't have that experience.
I think that's mostly true. That's not to say there aren't great administrators who have come from other art forms and have run orchestras successfully. But actually, I think if you look at the education and the careers of most chief execs of orchestras, there's some music in there somewhere for the vast majority, even if it's not professional. I mean, I played in youth orchestras and I sang, and I think you do need a little bit of sense of what professional musicians go through when they have to be excellent all the time, and the pressures they're under to And of course they all are, because they're so incredibly talented and professional, and they are excellent at 8 o'clock when the light goes on, as it were. You know, that's where they're awe-inspiring, because they can do things most of us can't. So
Yeah.
it's nice to be on the fringe of that and touch the hem of that sort of excellence.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think one of the things that you'll hear sometimes, especially in, you know, really tough negotiations, you'll hear a board member and, you know, being quoted as saying, well, you know, the musicians only work 20 hours a week or something like this. And that's the kind of thing that drives musicians crazy, because practicing for 5 hours before the 2-hour rehearsal, right?
Yeah.
And so knowing that kind of stuff, I mean, knowing what it's like to be a creative person is so crucial, I think, for every good manager out there.
I think so. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I really want to thank you for all your time today, Russell, and would love to have you back on again to continue this fascinating conversation, and wish you great luck with the future of Orchestra Lumos.
Thank you very much. Yeah, fingers crossed. I'm excited, and great to talk to you, Michael. Thanks so much.
Yeah, you too. And we'll see you all next time.